The story of Elon Musk. The person who need no introduction. June 28, 2024. The world watches as Elon Musk stands at the edge of history. SpaceX has just successfully launched its Starship rocket, the largest and most powerful spacecraft ever built. This is not just another rocket launch. This is the vehicle designed to carry humans to Mars, to make humanity a multiplanetary species. While other billionaires build yachts and buy sports teams, Musk is building the machine that might save civilization itself. But this moment reveals something deeper about the man. This is not sudden inspiration. This is not luck. This is the culmination of 53 years of preparation, of childhood dreams forged in the harsh sunlight of Apartheid South Africa, of brutal bullying that taught him to think differently, of a father so difficult that escape became the only option. Every failure at Tesla, every explosion at SpaceX, every controversy on Twitter has been part of a pattern visible since he was 10 years old, hunched over a VIC-20 computer in Pretoria, teaching himself to code because he believed the future would be digital. While the world sees a provocateur who tweets conspiracy theories and fights with regulators, who dates celebrities and names his children bizarre combinations of letters and numbers, there is a system underneath the chaos. A first principles thinking approach that strips problems down to their fundamental physics. A willingness to bet everything, repeatedly, on visions that seem impossible. A network of engineers and founders who follow him despite the impossible hours and brutal honesty because they believe he might actually change the world. This isn't the story of a perfect genius. This is the story of a deeply complicated man who decided in childhood that he would escape his circumstances through technology, who taught himself that survival means thinking 10 steps ahead, who learned from his abusive father exactly what kind of man he did not want to become but somehow absorbed many of those same traits. A man who genuinely believes that human civilization is at risk from artificial intelligence, from declining birth rates, from remaining confined to one planet. Whether you believe his diagnosis or not, whether you admire or despise him, one thing is undeniable. Elon Musk has changed the trajectory of multiple industries and possibly the future of human civilization itself. The question his life raises is not whether he is good or bad, hero or villain. The question is whether the demons that drive him, the childhood trauma that made him this way, the relentless need to prove himself, the inability to accept limits, are inseparable from the innovations he has created. Can you have the electric vehicle revolution without the mercurial CEO who terrorizes employees? Can you have reusable rockets without the founder who bets the company on every launch? Can you have the drive to make humanity multiplanetary without the man who cannot maintain a stable relationship with his own children? To understand Elon Musk, we need to go back to the beginning. To the world that made him. To Apartheid South Africa in the 1970s, where a young boy with an unusual name learned that the rules that govern most people's lives are arbitrary, that systems can be rebuilt from first principles, that survival sometimes means thinking differently than everyone around you. This is where the story begins. Elon Reeve Musk was born on June 28, 1971, in Pretoria, South Africa. The world he entered was one of stark contradictions and brutal realities that would shape everything about who he would become. Pretoria in 1971 was the administrative capital of a country built on racial segregation. Apartheid was not just a policy, it was a complete system that controlled every aspect of life. The 1970s in South Africa were the height of apartheid's power. The regime had grown more aggressive, passing laws that stripped black South Africans of basic rights, confined them to specific areas, controlled where they could work and live, separated families, and created a society where 7% of the population who were white owned 85% of the land. This was the world baby Elon entered. A world where if you were born white, as he was, you lived a life of extraordinary privilege built entirely on the oppression of others. Servants waited on you. Sprawling homes sheltered you. Private schools educated you. The brutality that made this possible was invisible to white children, or perhaps more accurately, was so normalized that it seemed like the natural order of things. Elon's mother, May Musk, was a stunning Canadian-born model and dietitian. She had been born May Haldeman in Saskatchewan, Canada in 1948. Her parents, Joshua and Winifred Haldeman, had moved the family to South Africa in 1950 when May was just 7 years old. This was no random immigration. Joshua Haldeman was a chiropractor and political activist who had been deeply involved in the technocracy movement in Canada, a fringe political ideology that believed engineers and technical experts should run society. When that movement failed in Canada, Haldeman looked for a new frontier. South Africa in 1950, just as apartheid was being formalized into law, appealed to him. According to family members, both Joshua and his wife Winifred were supporters of apartheid and held views that his son-in-law would later describe as fanatical. They supported the racial hierarchy, believed in white superiority, and saw nothing wrong with a system that gave them servants and land and power simply because of the color of their skin. Joshua Haldeman was also an adventurer and aviator, flying small planes across Africa searching for the mythical lost city of the Kalahari. Young Elon would grow up hearing his grandmother's stories about these adventures, absorbing the message that the world was there to be explored and conquered if you had the courage and technology to do it. Elon's father, Elon Musk, was an engineer and businessman, and by many accounts, one of the most complicated and troubling figures in this story. Elon was born in 1946 in Pretoria. His father, Walter Henry James Musk, was a white South African who had served in World War II. His mother, Cora Amelia Robinson, was English from Liverpool. Errol grew up with privilege and technical aptitude, studying engineering and going into business for himself. By the time Elon was born, Errol was already successful. He ran a mechanical and electrical engineering consulting firm that took on massive projects. Office buildings, retail complexes, residential subdivisions, even an Air Force base. He owned multiple properties, cars, even a yacht and a private plane. The family lived in what Errol describes as one of the biggest houses in Pretoria, an 8-bedroom mansion previously used as United Nations headquarters, designed by the famous architect Herbert Baker. The house had its own chef, multiple servants, a gymnasium, tennis court, jacuzzi, even a snooker room. Errol owned a horse farm in Sandton. The family traveled by private jet, drove Rolls-Royces, ate at the finest restaurants. This was not middle class. This was not modest. This was wealth built on the colonial extraction system that defined South Africa. Errol would later invest in emerald mines in Zambia, profiting from dangerous mining operations where workers died regularly but the owners got very rich. He has described having so much cash from emerald deals that he couldn't close his safe, of walking around with loose emeralds in his pockets, of his young sons Elon and Kimball allegedly selling emeralds to Tiffany & Company on Fifth Avenue in New York, though these stories have been disputed. What is undisputed is that Elon Musk had money, power, and a personality that even his son would later describe as that of the worst person on the planet. Mae Musk would later write in her memoir that Errol was physically, financially, and emotionally abusive throughout their marriage. She describes a man who was manipulative, controlling, violent. She recalls hiding at a neighbor's house after Errol showed up with a knife looking for her during their divorce. Multiple people who knew Errol describe him as brilliant at engineering but terrible as a human being. Elon Reeve Musk was the firstborn child of this complicated union. His unusual name came from his maternal great-grandfather. He was born into immense privilege in a profoundly unjust society to a beautiful mother who worked multiple jobs to support the family and an accomplished but deeply troubled father. He had a younger brother, Kimball, born in 1972, and a younger sister, Tosca, born in 1974. The world that shaped Elon's childhood was one where contradictions were everywhere. His grandmother told stories of adventure and exploration while supporting a racist regime. His father built impressive infrastructure projects while allegedly abusing his family. His mother was independent and accomplished while trapped in a toxic marriage. White South African children played in luxury while black children lived in townships with no running water or electricity. The message a child would absorb from this environment was clear. The rules are arbitrary. Power matters. Technical capability matters. Being comfortable with contradiction and injustice is how you survive. Elon was not a typical child. From the earliest age, he was different. He was introverted, bookish, often lost in thought. His parents and doctors became so concerned about how often he seemed to be ignoring people that they had his hearing tested. The doctors found nothing wrong with his ears. The problem was that Elon was so deep in his own head, thinking about whatever problem or idea fascinated him at that moment, that he literally did not hear people talking to him. He was an enthusiastic and voracious reader. Books became his escape and his education. He devoured science fiction. The Lord of the Rings taught him about quests and fellowship and fighting impossible odds. Isaac Asimov's Foundation series became perhaps the most influential books of his life, planting the idea that a small group of people with the right knowledge and planning could save civilization from collapse. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy taught him that absurdity and humor could coexist with profound questions about existence. These were not just entertainment. These were instruction manuals for how to think about the future, about humanity's place in the universe, about the responsibility of those with knowledge to act. At age 10, something happened that would change everything. Elon discovered computers. This was 1981, when personal computers were new and exotic, when most people had never touched one. Elon Musk had bought a Commodore VIC-20 computer. Elon was instantly obsessed. The VIC-20 came with a manual on how to program in BASIC, a programming language. The manual assumed the reader would work through it over 6 months. Elon finished it in 3 days. Then he started programming. He taught himself, staying up late into the night, experimenting, trying things, failing, trying again. This was where he learned the pattern that would define his life. You identify what you want to create. You break it down to first principles, the fundamental laws of physics or mathematics or logic that cannot be reduced further. You build up from there, testing each component, learning from failure, iterating until it works. There is no appeal to authority. There is no, this is how it's always been done. There is only, what is true, what is physically possible, how do I build it? At age 12, Elon created his first commercial product. A video game called Blaster. It was a simple space shooting game, nothing technically sophisticated by today's standards. But for a 12-year-old teaching himself programming in South Africa, it was an achievement. He sold the code to a magazine called PC and Office Technology for approximately $500. That is equivalent to about $1,579 in 2024. This was not just pocket money. This was proof of concept. You could create something from pure thought and code, and people would pay you for it. You could turn ideas into money, into independence. But while Elon's mind was soaring into code and science fiction, his daily life at school was often miserable. He was short, introverted, socially awkward, and different. He didn't care about sports or socializing. He wanted to talk about ideas and technology and the future. His peers found him weird. And in the brutal social hierarchy of South African boys' schools, weird meant target. Elon was bullied constantly and violently. This was not mild teasing. This was physical violence. He has described being beaten up so severely that he was once hospitalized. A group of boys threw him down a flight of stairs and then kicked him until he was unconscious. He has said that the damage from that beating left him with breathing problems that required surgery years later to fix. The bullying was relentless for years. Every day at school was survival. At age 12, Elon was sent to a wilderness survival camp called Veldskool. This was supposed to be character building, a South African tradition where boys learned to be tough. In reality, it was as close to Lord of the Flies as you could get in an organized program. Boys were given minimal food and water and were encouraged to compete for resources. Older, stronger kids beat up younger, weaker kids to take their rations. Physical aggression was not just tolerated, it was presented as a virtue. Elon, small and bookish, got beaten up twice during that first camp. But something changed. When he returned to the same camp at age 16, he had learned judo. He had gone through a growth spurt. And he had internalized a hard lesson. As he later put it, if someone bullies you and you punch them very hard in the nose, they won't bully you again. They might beat the hell out of you in that moment, but they won't come after you again. This was a formative insight. Overwhelming force applied to the critical point can change the entire dynamic. This is how he would later approach business competition and crisis management. When attacked, strike back with disproportionate force. The bullying left scars that never fully healed. Even as an adult, Elon has said that when he is stressed or in a dark place, his mind goes back to being bullied on the playground. The feeling of powerlessness, of being targeted, of being different and punished for it, this became part of his psychology. It helps explain his later obsession with control, with power, with being able to fight back. When he finally bought Twitter in 2022, transforming it into X, some observers noted that he was essentially buying the playground where he had been bullied. Now he owned it. Now he made the rules. Elon attended several schools in Pretoria. First Waterkloof House Preparatory School, then Bryanston High School, and finally Pretoria Boys High School, where he graduated. He was a decent but not exceptional student. He earned a 61 out of 100 in Afrikaans, the language of the Afrikaners who ran the Apartheid government. He earned a B on his senior math certification. He was not a straight A genius prodigy, at least not in the traditional academic sense. His genius was in obsessive focus on what interested him, and complete disinterest in everything else. What interested him was computers, technology, science fiction, and increasingly, getting out of South Africa. By his teenage years, Elon understood what many white South Africans his age understood. Mandatory military service was coming. All white males had to serve in the South African Defence Force. This meant participating in enforcing apartheid, possibly fighting in the border war, potentially being ordered to commit acts of violence against black South Africans. Elon wanted no part of this. But there was another reason to leave. South Africa felt small, provincial, limited. If you wanted to work on the cutting edge of technology, if you wanted to build the future, South Africa was not the place. The United States was where computers and software and innovation were happening. Silicon Valley. Stanford University. The internet was coming. Personal computers were proliferating. The future was being built in America, and Elon wanted to be part of building it. He had a path out. His mother May had been born in Canada. That meant Elon qualified for Canadian citizenship by birthright. At age 17, Elon applied for a Canadian passport. The stated reason was to avoid mandatory military service in the apartheid regime. The real reason was that Canada was a stepping stone to the United States. It was easier to emigrate to America from Canada than from South Africa. Elon was already thinking several moves ahead. When Elon left South Africa in 1988 at age 17, he left with a backpack, a suitcase of books, and about $2,000. His relationship with his father was already strained. He had chosen to live with Errol after his parents divorced when Elon was around 9 years old. The reason was simple. Errol had an Encyclopedia Britannica and a computer. But living with Errol had been difficult. Elon would later describe his father as brilliant but terrible, someone with exceptional engineering skills but profound character flaws. He became estranged from Errol, a rift that has never fully healed. May, meanwhile, had been struggling financially. After the divorce, despite Errol's wealth, which included yachts and planes and multiple properties, May did not receive significant support. She worked 5 jobs at one point to support herself and her children. She ate peanut butter sandwiches and bean soup. She was a model but also worked as a dietitian and took whatever work she could find. When Elon moved to Canada, she could not support him financially. He was on his own. This is important because Elon has always disputed the narrative that he came from wealth and privilege. While it is true that his early childhood was spent in luxury, by the time he left South Africa, he had essentially no family money behind him. He would take on over $100,000 in student debt. He would work odd jobs. He would struggle. The privilege of his early childhood gave him confidence and education and connections, but it did not give him a trust fund. Whatever he would build, he would have to build himself. Elon's first years in North America were difficult. He arrived in Canada in June of 1989 at age 17 and stayed briefly with relatives. Then he moved to Ontario to attend Queen's University in Kingston. He chose Queens partly because it was affordable, partly because he had family connections in Canada, and partly because it was a path to eventually transferring to an American university. His time at Queens was academically unremarkable but socially important. This is where he met Justine Wilson, a fellow student and aspiring writer who would become his first wife. Justine has described Elon pursuing her persistently. He would appear at her dorm with ice cream, despite her saying she was busy. He was confident, intense, focused on what he wanted, and unwilling to accept no for an answer. These same traits would characterize his business career. After 2 years at Queens, in 1992, Elon transferred to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. This was a major step up, an Ivy League school with connections to business and technology. At Penn, Elon pursued a difficult double major. He earned a bachelor's degree in economics from the Wharton School of Business and a bachelor's degree in physics from the College of Arts and Sciences. He graduated in 1997. The combination is revealing. Economics taught him how markets work, how businesses are valued, how capital flows. Physics taught him to think in first principles, to understand the fundamental laws that govern reality. This combination, business sense plus physics thinking, would become his competitive advantage. He could understand both why something should be built and how it could be built. At Penn, Elon and a friend rented a large house near campus and threw parties on weekends to help pay the rent. This showed early entrepreneurial thinking. Take an asset, your house. Add value, throw a party. Charge money. Cover costs. It was not genius, but it showed he was always thinking about how to solve problems, especially money problems. During his time at Penn, Elon had summer internships that exposed him to different aspects of business and technology. One was at a startup in Silicon Valley. Another was at Pinnacle Research Institute, where he worked on ultra-high energy capacitors for use in electric vehicles. Even then, he was thinking about electric vehicles. He could see that internal combustion engines were inefficient, that electric motors were superior in almost every way if you could solve the battery problem. The seeds of Tesla were being planted, though he did not know it yet. After graduating from Penn in 1997, Elon was accepted to a PhD program in energy physics at Stanford University, one of the most prestigious programs in the country. Stanford was the heart of Silicon Valley, surrounded by startups and venture capital and the nascent internet boom. Elon arrived in California in the fall of 1995 ready to study applied physics and materials science. He lasted 2 days. This was not because Stanford was too hard. It was because Elon looked around and realized that the internet was exploding. Netscape had just gone public. Businesses were rushing online. The world was changing in real time, and sitting in a lab studying capacitors for 5 years while the internet revolution happened seemed insane. The opportunity cost was too high. If he stayed at Stanford, he would emerge in 5 years with a PhD and deep technical knowledge. But the world would have already been transformed by people who acted now. This is a key decision point in understanding Elon Musk. He had been accepted to one of the best PhD programs in the country. He had worked hard to get there. The conventional path was clear. Get the PhD, get hired by a top company or national lab, do important work. But Elon saw a bigger opportunity. The risk of dropping out was high. The odds of startup success were low. But the potential upside and the speed of learning in a startup were much higher. He chose to drop out and start a company. His parents thought he was crazy. His advisors thought he was crazy. But Elon had done the math. The internet was the future. He needed to be building it, not studying it. This willingness to abandon the conventional path, to bet on his own judgment against expert opinion, to prioritize speed and potential impact over safety and credentials, this pattern would repeat throughout his career. It is either visionary courage or reckless hubris, depending on the outcome. Often it is both. In November of 1995, 24-year-old Elon Musk and his younger brother Kimball Musk, along with a friend named Greg Currie, founded a company in Palo Alto, California. They called it Global Link Information Network. It would later be renamed Zip2. This was Elon's first company, the foundation of everything that followed. The concept was straightforward but ahead of its time. Zip2 would create online city guides for newspapers. Remember, this was 1995. Most newspapers had no internet presence. Most businesses had no websites. The Yellow Pages telephone directory was still how people found local businesses. The internet was new, strange, not yet trusted for commerce. But Elon saw that this would change rapidly. People would soon turn to the internet for everything, including finding local restaurants, services, and businesses. Zip2's software allowed newspapers to create searchable online directories of local businesses with maps, directions, and contact information. It was basically Google Maps plus Yelp before either of those existed. The business model was to license the software to newspapers, who were desperate to stay relevant as classified ads and readers moved online. The early days were brutal. Elon and Kimball could not afford an apartment, so they slept in the office. They showered at the local YMCA. They coded all night and tried to sell to newspapers during the day. Elon was the technical brain, writing most of the code himself. He was obsessive, working 7 days a week, sometimes not leaving the office for days. The website was live during the day for users, and Elon coded it at night, constantly improving it, fixing bugs, adding features. The Musk brothers put in their own money. Elon invested $2,000, Kimball $5,000, and Greg Currie $8,000. This was their life savings. They also raised money from angel investors, early believers who provided enough capital to keep the lights on and pay for servers and basic expenses. According to various accounts, Elon Musk provided $28,000 during an early funding round in 1995, representing about 10% of that round. Elon has downplayed this contribution and disputes that he got significant family money, but by his own acknowledgement, his father did provide some capital. The work was grueling. Elon's intensity was both an asset and a problem. He was absolutely convinced his vision was right, and he drove himself and everyone around him relentlessly. He wanted to be CEO of his own company, to have control over strategy and execution. But the investors had other ideas. As Zip2 grew and took on more venture capital funding, the board of directors decided that a 26-year-old with no business experience should not be CEO. They installed a more experienced executive, Rich Sorkin, and moved Elon to Chief Technology Officer. This was humiliating for Elon, his first experience being pushed aside in his own company. But the board's decision was probably correct from a business perspective. Elon was brilliant technically but inexperienced in sales, management, and corporate politics. Sorkin helped professionalize the company, brought in better processes, and helped close deals with major newspapers. Zip2 signed contracts with the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, and about 160 newspapers nationwide. By 1998, the company was a significant player in the internet space, with offices and revenue and a real business. Elon's vision had been proven right. Newspapers did need to move online. Local businesses did need an internet presence. Elon had seen this before most people understood it. In February of 1999, Compaq Computer Corporation, one of the largest computer manufacturers in the world, acquired Zip2 for $307 million in cash. This was one of the largest internet acquisitions at that time. For Elon, who owned about 7% of the company, this meant $22 million. For Kimball, who owned less, this meant $15 million. At age 27, Elon Musk was suddenly a multimillionaire. The Zip2 sale taught Elon several lessons, some positive, some painful. Positive, his instinct about the internet was correct. He could see technological shifts before they were obvious. He could build real products that solved real problems. He could attract investors and customers. He could create value. Painful, losing control of your own company sucks. Being fired as CEO of your own startup is humiliating. Even if the board was right that he was not ready, the experience burned. He vowed that in future companies, he would maintain more control, structure equity and voting rights to keep power, and never let investors push him aside again. This determination to maintain control would later shape how he structured Tesla and SpaceX, keeping enough ownership and board seats to ensure he could never be ousted. Another lesson: dilution is real. Despite starting the company, despite putting in years of brutal work, Elon walked away with only 7% ownership and $22 million, while investors who came in later with cash made more. This taught him about the power of capital and ownership structure. In future ventures, he would be much more careful about dilution, raising money only when absolutely necessary, and retaining as much equity as possible. But the biggest lesson from Zip2 was proof of concept. Elon Musk could build a successful company. He could go from idea to execution to exit. He had tasted success and wealth. And he was just getting started. The $22 million from Zip2 was not retirement money. It was ammunition for the next and much bigger bet. The question facing 27-year-old Elon Musk in early 1999 was simple. What do you do after your first successful startup exit? Most people would take time off, enjoy the money, maybe angel invest in other companies. Elon immediately started planning his next company, something even more ambitious than Zip2. Something that could change not just newspapers, but the entire financial system. Within weeks of the Zip2 sale closing, Elon Musk was back to working 18-hour days on a new startup. It would be called X.com, and it would nearly destroy him. In March 1999, just 1 month after selling Zip2, Elon Musk founded X.com with about $10 million of his Zip2 proceeds. The vision was radical for its time. X.com would be a full-service online bank offering checking accounts, savings accounts, money transfers, investments, even loans, all through the internet with no physical branches. This was banking reimagined for the digital age. The timing seemed perfect. The internet boom was accelerating. E-commerce was exploding. People were learning to trust the internet with purchases. The next logical step was to trust it with their entire financial lives. Traditional banks were slow, inefficient, charging high fees, requiring physical visits. An online bank could operate with much lower costs, pass the savings to customers, and move much faster. Elon brought on co-founders including Harris Fricker and Christopher Payne. They launched in late 1999 with an aggressive strategy. Sign up for X.com and get $20 deposited into your account immediately. Refer a friend and get another $10. This was essentially paying people to try the service, and it worked. Within months, over 200,000 customers had opened accounts. But X.com faced intense competition. Just 2 blocks away in Palo Alto, another startup called Confinity was working on something similar. Confinity had been founded by Max Levchin and Peter Thiel, brilliant entrepreneurs with their own vision for digital payments. Confinity had developed a product called PayPal that allowed people to send money to each other using Palm Pilot personal digital assistants and later through email. PayPal was gaining traction, especially on eBay, where people needed a way to pay each other for auction purchases. X.com and Confinity were direct competitors burning through cash trying to acquire customers. Both companies realized they were in a war of attrition that might destroy them both. In March 2000, they agreed to merge. On paper, X.com acquired Confinity, with Elon as the largest shareholder and CEO of the combined company. But integrating the two cultures and technologies proved extremely difficult. The engineering teams disagreed fundamentally about technology choices. Elon preferred Microsoft Windows servers. The Confinity team, led by Peter Thiel and Max Levchin, had built everything on Unix Linux systems. The debate became heated, technical, almost religious. Each side believed their approach was obviously superior. The tension was making productive work impossible. Meanwhile, the product strategy was confused. Should they focus on the X.com full-service banking vision? Or should they focus on PayPal's person-to-person payment service, which was growing faster on eBay? The company was trying to do both and doing neither particularly well. Fraud was also becoming a massive problem. Criminals figured out how to exploit PayPal's system, creating fake accounts, stealing money. The company was losing millions of dollars to fraud while also spending millions on customer acquisition. In September 2000, while Elon Musk was on his honeymoon in Australia with his now wife Justine Wilson, whom he had married that January, the board of directors made a decision. They voted to remove Elon as CEO and replace him with Peter Thiel. Elon flew back from his honeymoon to discover he had been fired from his own company for the second time in 2 years. This was devastating. Elon had put in $10 million of his own money, worked grueling hours, and driven customer acquisition. Now he was out. The official reasons were that the company needed more experienced leadership, that Elon's technical choices were wrong, that the product strategy needed to change. But the underlying reason was that the board and key executives, especially the former Confinity team, did not believe Elon was the right CEO for this stage. For most people, this would be the end of the story. But Elon remained the largest shareholder with about 11.72% of the company. He stayed on the board. He watched as Peter Thiel made the crucial decision to abandon the full-service banking vision and focus entirely on PayPal as a payment platform. This was probably the right strategic choice. PayPal was growing virally on eBay, becoming the default way people paid each other online. The banking features were a distraction. Under Thiel's leadership and with Bill Harris as president, the company rebranded fully as PayPal, refined the product, cracked down on fraud with better algorithms, and prepared for an IPO. On February 15, 2002, PayPal went public on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. The timing was remarkable. This was during the dot-com crash, when most internet companies were dying. PayPal was one of the few that actually worked, that had real revenue and real customers. Then in October 2002, eBay acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion in stock. For Elon Musk, who had held onto his shares through all the turmoil, this meant about $175.8 million. At age 31, Elon was now very wealthy. But more importantly, he had been part of building a company that genuinely changed how people transacted online. PayPal became the standard for internet payments, processing billions of dollars in transactions. The PayPal experience taught Elon more hard lessons. He had been removed as CEO twice now, at Zip2 and at X.com PayPal. This reinforced his determination to maintain control. It also taught him about executive leadership and decisiveness. Peter Thiel had made the tough call to kill the banking features and focus on payments. That strategic clarity, the willingness to abandon your original vision when the data shows a better path, was a lesson Elon absorbed. PayPal also created what became known as the PayPal Mafia, a network of founders and early employees who went on to create and invest in dozens of major companies. Peter Thiel founded Palantir and became a legendary investor. Reid Hoffman founded LinkedIn. Jeremy Stoppelman and Russell Simmons founded Yelp. Jawed Karim, Chad Hurley, and Steve Chen founded YouTube. David Sachs became a prominent venture capitalist. These people formed a network of relationships and capital and knowledge that would shape Silicon Valley for the next 2 decades. Elon was part of this network, and these relationships would matter. But while his peers from PayPal mostly went into social media and consumer internet companies, Elon had different plans. He was not interested in building the next social network or photo-sharing app. He was interested in problems that most people thought were impossible. He wanted to work on things that would fundamentally change human civilization. He had decided that humanity's future depended on solving 2 existential challenges. 1. Becoming a multiplanetary species. 2. Transitioning away from fossil fuels. The money from PayPal would fund his pursuit of both. In the year 2002, at age 31, with $175 million in the bank, Elon Musk did something that most people thought was insane. He decided to start a rocket company. Not a rocket parts company. Not a rocket services company. A company that would build rockets from scratch, compete with Boeing and Lockheed Martin, and ultimately make humans a multiplanetary species. He called it Space Exploration Technologies Corporation. Everyone else called it SpaceX. The story of why Elon Musk started SpaceX begins with a simple observation that had bothered him since he was a child reading science fiction. We went to the moon in 1969. Then we stopped. The Apollo program ended in 1972. The Space Shuttle flew from 1981 to 2011 but never went beyond low Earth orbit. There were no moon bases. No Mars colonies. No asteroid mining. No expanding frontier. Space exploration had stagnated. In 2001, Elon joined the board of the Mars Society, a non-profit that advocated for human exploration of Mars. He started thinking seriously about what it would take to reignite public interest in space. One idea was Mars Oasis, a privately funded mission to land a small greenhouse on Mars, grow plants there, and take pictures. It would be a symbolic demonstration that life could exist on Mars, hopefully inspiring governments to fund larger missions. The problem was the cost of launching anything to Mars. Rockets were insanely expensive, hundreds of millions of dollars per launch. Elon started researching why. He discovered that most of the cost was not the rockets themselves but the business structures and incentives of the aerospace industry. Companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin had comfortable cost-plus contracts with the government. They had no incentive to reduce costs. In fact, their profits were calculated as a percentage of costs, so they made more money by spending more. Elon became convinced that rockets could be built much cheaper using vertical integration, building components in-house rather than relying on expensive subcontractors, and modern manufacturing techniques. He decided to start a company to prove this. In May 2002, SpaceX was founded with Elon putting in $100 million of his own money from the PayPal sale. He became CEO and chief engineer. The plan was to build the Falcon 1, a small rocket that could put payloads into low Earth orbit for a fraction of the cost of existing rockets. If that worked, they would scale up to larger rockets. The ultimate goal was to make rockets reusable like airplanes, dramatically dropping the cost per launch and enabling Mars colonization. Most aerospace experts thought this was a fantasy. The rocket industry had existed for 50 years. The big companies had thousands of engineers and billions of dollars. What made Elon think he could do better? The answer was first principles thinking. Elon looked at the raw material costs of a rocket. Aluminum, titanium, copper, carbon fiber. These materials, purchased at commodity prices, cost perhaps 2% of the typical launch price. The other 98% was labor, overhead, profit margins, and inefficiency. If you could design a simpler rocket, manufacture it efficiently in-house, and eliminate unnecessary middlemen, you could reduce costs by orders of magnitude. SpaceX started in a warehouse in El Segundo, California, near Los Angeles. Elon hired talented engineers, many young and willing to take a chance on a crazy startup. He gave them impossible deadlines and impossible goals. Build a rocket in 3 years that would normally take 10. Do it for 1/10 the cost. Make it work on the first try. The culture was intense, demanding, exhilarating, and brutal. People worked 100-hour weeks. Elon worked more than that, sleeping on the factory floor, involved in every technical decision. The first Falcon 1 launch was in March 2006 from the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands, one of the most remote launch sites on Earth. The rocket exploded 1 minute after launch. A fuel line leak caused a fire. Failure. The second launch was in March 2007. The rocket successfully reached space but did not reach orbit due to a roll control issue. Partial success, but still failure to achieve the mission. The third launch was in August 2008. Again, the rocket failed to reach orbit due to a stage separation problem. 3 launches, 3 failures. SpaceX was running out of money. Elon had spent nearly his entire fortune. The company was weeks away from bankruptcy. Employees were not sure if they would get paid. Everything hung on the 4th launch. In September 2008, the 4th Falcon 1 attempt launched. This time, everything worked. The rocket reached orbit. SpaceX became the first privately funded company to successfully launch a liquid fuel rocket to orbit. It was a historic achievement, but more importantly, it saved the company. Shortly after, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to fly cargo to the International Space Station. This contract gave SpaceX the cash flow to survive and develop the larger Falcon 9 rocket. The Falcon 9, first launched in June 2010, could carry much heavier payloads and was designed from the start for reusability. Elon's vision was that rockets should work like airplanes. You fly them, you land them, you refuel them, you fly them again. In the aerospace industry, this was considered impossible. Rockets had always been expendable, used once and thrown away. But Elon believed the physics allowed for reusability, and economics demanded it. SpaceX spent years trying to land Falcon 9 first stages. Over and over, they tried and failed. Rockets crashed into the ocean. They exploded on landing pads. They tipped over. Each failure was analyzed, changes were made, they tried again. Then on December 21, 2015, a Falcon 9 first stage successfully landed back at Cape Canaveral after delivering payloads to orbit. It was the first time an orbital rocket booster had landed vertically and been recovered intact. The SpaceX team erupted in celebration. This was the breakthrough that would change everything. Since then, SpaceX has landed hundreds of boosters. Some boosters have flown more than 20 times. The cost of launch has dropped by a factor of 10 or more. SpaceX now launches more tonnage to orbit than the rest of the world combined. It has become the dominant player in the global launch market, undercutting competitors and winning contracts from NASA, the Department of Defense, and commercial satellite companies worldwide. Beyond Falcon 9, SpaceX developed the Dragon spacecraft for carrying cargo and crew to the International Space Station. In May 2020, SpaceX launched the first crewed mission to the ISS from American soil since the Space Shuttle retired in 2011. Elon's company, barely 20 years old, was now flying NASA astronauts. This was something most people thought would never happen. SpaceX is now developing Starship, the largest and most powerful rocket ever built. Starship is designed to carry 100 people to Mars, land, refuel using resources on Mars, and return to Earth. It is fully reusable. It is made of stainless steel, an unconventional choice that reduces cost. Test flights are ongoing. Explosions continue. Elon says each failure teaches them something. The goal remains the same. Make humanity multiplanetary before some catastrophe wipes out civilization on Earth. Critics say this is delusional, that Mars colonization is a fantasy, that Elon is wasting money on impossible dreams. Supporters say he has already achieved what experts said was impossible, that he has reduced launch costs by 90%, that he has made America the dominant space power again. Whatever your view, SpaceX has fundamentally changed the space industry and demonstrated that private companies can do what was once thought to require nation-states. The secret source of SpaceX's success was not genius engineering, though that mattered. It was Elon's willingness to tolerate failure in pursuit of learning. Every rocket explosion, every landing failure, every blown-up test article generated data that informed the next attempt. Most aerospace companies avoid failure at all costs because their reputation and government contracts depend on reliability. SpaceX embraced failure as part of the development process. Build fast, test fast, fail fast, learn fast, iterate. This Silicon Valley approach applied to hardware and rocketry was revolutionary. The other secret was vertical integration. SpaceX builds about 80% of its rocket components in-house. This gives them control over quality, cost, and iteration speed. They can redesign a component and have the new version built in weeks, not years. This agility allowed them to out-innovate competitors who were locked into complex supply chains and slow bureaucratic processes. But perhaps the deepest source of SpaceX's success was Elon's refusal to accept received wisdom. When aerospace engineers said something was impossible, Elon asked why. Often the answer was, that is how we have always done it, or regulations require it, or it would be too expensive. Elon would break down the problem to physics fundamentals. Is this physically impossible? No. Then it is just an engineering problem. We can solve it. This mindset, learned from first principles thinking and science fiction, allowed him to see possibilities that experts, constrained by their training and experience, could not see. By 2025, SpaceX is valued at over $180 billion. It is the most valuable private company in the world. Elon owns about 42% of it. This is the largest source of his personal wealth. SpaceX employs over 13,000 people. It launches satellites for companies and governments worldwide. It provides Starlink internet service to millions of people, including in war zones and disaster areas. It is building the rocket that might take humans to Mars. All of this exists because Elon Musk looked at the aerospace industry in 2002 and thought, "I can do this better." While SpaceX was nearly bankrupting Elon Musk in the mid-2000s, he made another decision that seemed equally insane. He invested in and eventually took over an electric car company called Tesla Motors. This move would transform the automotive industry and make Elon a household name. It would also nearly destroy him in the process. Tesla Motors was founded in July 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, two engineers with a vision to build a high-performance electric sports car. Their insight was that electric vehicles had always been marketed as practical, boring, compromised vehicles for environmentalists. What if instead you built an electric car that was actually desirable, that was faster and cooler than gasoline cars? That would change the perception and accelerate adoption. In February 2004, Elon Musk led the Series A investment round, investing $6.5 million of his own money. This made him the largest shareholder and chairman of the board. J.B. Straubel, an engineer who had been experimenting with electric vehicle technology, also joined as CTO. Over the next few years, Elon invested progressively more, leading subsequent funding rounds and becoming more involved in strategy and product decisions. The first Tesla product was the Roadster, unveiled in 2006 and delivered starting in 2008. It was based on the Lotus Elise chassis but with a battery pack and electric motor instead of a gasoline engine. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 4 seconds and had a range of 245 miles per charge. This was unheard of for electric vehicles. The Roadster proved that electric cars could be fast, fun, and desirable. It changed the conversation. But behind the scenes, Tesla was in constant crisis. Development costs overran budgets. Manufacturing proved much harder than expected. Eberhard and Musk clashed over strategy and management. In 2007, the board ousted Eberhard as CEO, replacing him with Michael Marks and then Zev Drury. Elon was increasingly involved in day-to-day operations, pushing for changes, demanding more control. In October 2008, Elon became CEO of Tesla. He was now running both SpaceX and Tesla simultaneously, both companies burning through cash, both near bankruptcy. 2008 and 2009 were the darkest period of Elon's life. The global financial crisis hit. Credit markets froze. Raising money became nearly impossible. SpaceX had failed 3 Falcon 9 launches and was weeks from running out of cash. Tesla was burning millions per month and could not secure financing. Elon was going through a difficult divorce from Justine, his first wife. They had married in 2000, had 6 children together including twins and triplets through IVF after their first son Nevada died of SIDS at 10 weeks old. The divorce was bitter and public. Elon had to decide how to allocate his remaining money. He had about $70 million left from the PayPal sale. Both companies needed capital to survive. He could save one, but probably not both. Putting everything into one company and letting the other die would be the rational choice. Instead, Elon split the money between them. He put $40 million into SpaceX and $30 million into Tesla. This meant both companies might die, but it gave each a chance. On Christmas Eve 2008, Elon was hours away from declaring Tesla bankrupt. Then a wire transfer came through. SpaceX had secured the $1.6 billion NASA contract after its successful 4th launch. This gave Elon enough breathing room to close Tesla's financing round. Both companies survived by the narrowest of margins. This period revealed something essential about Elon Musk. He is willing to bet everything, including his personal fortune and sanity, on his vision. Most entrepreneurs diversify risk. Elon concentrates it. When both his companies were dying, he could have kept some money for himself, maintained his lifestyle, invested in safer ventures. Instead, he put everything into the two companies. This is either extraordinary courage or extraordinary recklessness. Probably both. Tesla went public in June 2010, raising $226 million. The stock was priced at $17 per share. This was the first American car company to go public since Ford in 1956. It gave Tesla the capital to develop the Model S, a luxury sedan designed to prove that electric cars could compete with the best gasoline cars not on environmentalism but on performance, technology, and design. The Model S launched in 2012 and was immediately acclaimed. It had stunning looks, incredible acceleration, over-the-air software updates like a smartphone, and advanced features like a giant touchscreen that controlled everything. Motor Trend named it Car of the Year. Consumer Reports gave it their highest rating ever. It won awards worldwide. Finally, an electric car that was genuinely better than gasoline cars, not just more environmental. Tesla followed with the Model X, a luxury SUV with falcon wing doors that opened upward, launched in 2015. Then came the Model 3, a more affordable sedan priced to reach mass-market consumers, launched in 2017. The Model 3 became the best-selling electric car in history, with millions delivered worldwide. It proved that electric vehicles could scale beyond the luxury market. Throughout this growth, Tesla faced constant production challenges. Elon called the Model 3 production ramp production hell. The company struggled to build cars fast enough to meet demand. Elon was sleeping on the factory floor, personally fixing production line issues, yelling at suppliers, pushing everyone to move faster. Analysts predicted bankruptcy. Short sellers bet billions that Tesla would fail. The stock price was volatile. Journalists wrote that Tesla was a house of cards. But Tesla survived and eventually thrived. It built gigafactories in Nevada, Shanghai, Berlin, and Texas. It became the most valuable car company in the world by market capitalization, worth more than Toyota, Volkswagen, and GM combined. It produced over 1.8 million vehicles in 2023. It pioneered battery technology, making batteries cheaper and more energy-dense. It developed advanced driver assistance called autopilot and later full self-driving, though the latter name is controversial because the cars are not yet fully autonomous. Tesla's success forced the entire automotive industry to shift to electric vehicles. Every major car manufacturer announced electric vehicle plans, investing hundreds of billions of dollars. Governments worldwide set deadlines to ban gasoline car sales. The transition to electric vehicles, which had seemed decades away, suddenly seemed inevitable. Tesla had changed the trajectory of the automotive industry, and through that, reduced projected carbon emissions. The secret source of Tesla's success was not the battery technology, though that mattered. Other companies had electric vehicles. The secret was treating cars like software. Tesla built cars with over-the-air update capability from day one. Your car got better over time as Tesla pushed new features and improvements through software updates. This was unheard of in the automotive industry, where cars were static products that only degraded after purchase. Tesla made cars that improved, that added features, that became more valuable. This created customer loyalty and a technological moat that traditional automakers could not easily copy. The other secret was vertical integration again. Tesla did not just assemble cars from parts bought from suppliers. It designed and manufactured batteries, motors, electronics, even seats and door handles. This gave them control over the entire product and allowed innovation at every level. When they needed batteries cheaper, they built the Gigafactory. When they needed software better, they hired the best engineers and gave them freedom to innovate. Traditional automakers outsourced too much and moved too slowly. But the deepest secret was Elon's product taste. He cared obsessively about details. He personally reviewed designs, rejected parts that felt cheap, demanded that everything meet his standard. The door handles on the Model S retracted flush when the car was parked and extended when you approached with the key. This was unnecessary complexity from an engineering standpoint. But it made the car feel special, futuristic, different. Thousands of little decisions like this added up to products that felt like the future. By 2025, Tesla has delivered over 5 million electric vehicles cumulatively. It is accelerating production, building new factories, developing new models including the Cybertruck. The company faces increasing competition from traditional automakers and Chinese companies, but it remains the leader in electric vehicles globally. Elon owns about 13% of Tesla, worth over $80 billion. This is another massive source of his personal wealth. SpaceX and Tesla were not enough. Between running two of the most ambitious companies in the world, Elon kept starting new ventures, each aimed at solving what he saw as existential risks or massive inefficiencies. Some of these ventures were directly related to his main companies. Others seemed like side projects born from moments of frustration or inspiration. In 2006, Elon conceptualized SolarCity, a solar energy company that would make solar panels accessible to homeowners through innovative financing. His cousins Lyndon and Peter Rive founded the company, and Elon was the chairman and largest shareholder. The logic was clear. Electric vehicles need clean electricity, or you are just moving emissions from the tailpipe to the power plant. Solar energy could provide that clean electricity. In 2016, Tesla acquired SolarCity for $2.6 billion, creating an integrated sustainable energy company. The acquisition was controversial. Critics said Elon was bailing out a failing company that he was personally invested in. Supporters said it made strategic sense to integrate solar generation, battery storage, and electric vehicles. In 2015, Elon co-founded OpenAI, a non-profit artificial intelligence research lab. The mission was to ensure that advanced AI would benefit all of humanity, not just a few powerful corporations. Elon had become convinced that AI posed an existential threat, potentially greater than nuclear weapons. He believed unrestricted AI development without safety research could lead to scenarios where AI systems optimized for narrow goals caused catastrophic harm to humans. OpenAI was intended as a counterbalance to Google's AI research, emphasizing open source and safety. Elon served on OpenAI's board and donated significant money. But in 2018, he resigned, citing conflicts of interest with AI work at Tesla for self-driving features. There were also tensions over strategy. Elon reportedly wanted to run OpenAI or merge it with Tesla. The other founders wanted to remain independent. After Elon left, OpenAI shifted from purely non-profit to a capped profit model to raise more capital, eventually taking investment from Microsoft. In 2024, Elon sued OpenAI and Microsoft, accusing them of betraying the original non-profit mission. Meanwhile, OpenAI had developed GPT language models that became the foundation for ChatGPT, one of the fastest-growing consumer products in history. Elon's concerns about AI led him to start yet another AI company. In July 2023, he founded xAI with the mission to understand the true nature of the universe. xAI developed Grok, an AI chatbot integrated into X, formerly Twitter, designed to be more truthful and less politically correct than competitors. The company raised billions in funding and recruited top AI researchers. Elon said xAI would pursue maximum truth-seeking AI rather than AI constrained by political correctness or corporate interests. In 2016, Elon founded Neuralink, a neurotechnology company developing brain-computer interfaces. The goal is to create a device that can be implanted in the human brain, allowing direct communication between neurons and computers. Medical applications include helping people with paralysis control devices with their thoughts, restoring vision to the blind, and treating neurological conditions like epilepsy and Parkinson's disease. The longer-term vision is more radical. Elon believes that to remain relevant in an age of advanced AI, humans will need to merge with AI, augmenting our biological intelligence with digital intelligence. Neuralink is working toward this through devices that could eventually allow humans to interface with computers as naturally as we use our hands. Neuralink has conducted extensive animal testing, sometimes controversially. In January 2024, the company announced it had successfully implanted its first device in a human patient with quadriplegia. The patient, a 29-year-old man, was able to control a computer cursor with his thoughts. Early results showed successful neuron activity detection. Neuralink plans to expand clinical trials, though the technology is still experimental and years away from widespread use. In December 2016, Elon started the Boring Company after being stuck in Los Angeles traffic. He tweeted that traffic was driving him nuts and he was going to build a tunnel boring machine and start digging. Most people thought this was a joke. It was not. The Boring Company was founded to create underground transportation tunnels that could alleviate traffic congestion. The idea is to build a network of tunnels under cities where vehicles could travel at high speed on electric skates. The company has completed some projects, including a tunnel system in Las Vegas connecting convention centers, but progress has been slower than Elon's initial promises. Critics say it is a distraction. Elon says it is solving a real problem that cities will face as they grow denser. Each of these ventures reveals something about Elon's thinking. He is not interested in incremental improvements or conventional business opportunities. He looks for problems that he believes are existentially important or egregiously inefficient. Space travel is too expensive and stagnant. Solution: build reusable rockets. Transportation is fossil fuel dependent. Solution: build electric vehicles and solar energy. Traffic is terrible. Solution: dig tunnels. AI might destroy humanity. Solution: build safer AI or merge humans with AI. This approach has made Elon one of the most influential people alive. Forbes estimates his net worth at approximately $500 billion as of October 2025, making him the wealthiest person in the world and the first person ever to reach a net worth of $500 billion. This wealth comes primarily from his stakes in Tesla at about 13% and SpaceX at about 42%. He also owns X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, Neuralink, The Boring Company, and XAI. But wealth alone does not explain Elon's cultural impact. He has become a polarizing figure who inspires devotion and hatred in equal measure. To his supporters, he is a visionary genius who is single-handedly advancing human civilization, making space travel affordable, accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, and pushing the boundaries of technology. To his critics, he is a narcissistic billionaire who overpromises and underdelivers, who treats employees poorly, who spreads misinformation on social media, and who has accumulated dangerous levels of power with insufficient accountability. Part of this polarization comes from Elon's use of Twitter, now called X. Elon had been an active Twitter user for years, using the platform to make announcements, share memes, respond to critics, and joke with followers. His tweets moved markets. When he tweeted about Tesla's stock price being too high, the stock dropped billions in value. When he tweeted about Dogecoin, a cryptocurrency that started as a joke, its price surged. His tweets about taking Tesla private at $420 per share, funding secured, led to an SEC investigation and settlement where Elon had to step down as Tesla chairman and have his tweets pre-approved if they contained material information about Tesla. In 2022, Elon made the surprising decision to buy Twitter itself for $44 billion. The acquisition was chaotic. Elon made an unsolicited offer, then tried to back out claiming Twitter had misrepresented the number of bot accounts, then was forced by a lawsuit to complete the purchase. He financed the deal partly with loans, partly by selling Tesla stock, partly with investor partners. In October 2022, the deal closed, and Elon Musk owned Twitter. Immediately, he implemented dramatic changes. He fired about 75% of Twitter's staff, including most of the content moderation and trust and safety teams. He reinstated previously banned accounts including former President Donald Trump. He changed the verification system, allowing anyone to buy a blue checkmark for $8 per month instead of verifying identity or notability. He rebranded the entire company from Twitter to X, changing the name, the logo, and the domain. Elon's stated goal was to create a free speech platform with minimal content moderation, arguing that Twitter had become too politically censorious, banning people for views that did not align with progressive orthodoxy. His critics argued that less moderation led to increased hate speech, harassment, and misinformation. Major advertisers fled the platform, concerned about brand safety. Elon responded by attacking advertisers and saying they were trying to blackmail him through financial pressure. The result was a platform in chaos. Revenue dropped significantly as advertisers left. User engagement metrics were disputed, with some claiming users were leaving and others claiming usage was up. Elon personally engaged with right-wing accounts, amplified conspiracy theories, and made statements about gender ideology, immigration, and politics that alienated many users while attracting others. X became a more politically charged, less advertiser-friendly, but arguably more free speech-oriented platform, for better or worse depending on your perspective. The Twitter acquisition revealed another layer of Elon's psychology. He bought the platform partly for business reasons, believing he could turn it into an everything app like China's WeChat. But he also bought it for personal reasons. He felt he had been treated unfairly by journalists and critics on the platform. He wanted control. He wanted to set the rules. He wanted to own the playground where he had been mocked and attacked. This same impulse that drove him to punch bullies in the nose as a child drove him to spend $44 billion to own the platform where people criticized him. The Twitter acquisition also marked Elon's shift toward much more explicit political engagement. Previously, he had described himself as politically moderate, donating to both Democrats and Republicans. He supported Andrew Young's Democratic primary campaign in 2020. He opposed many COVID lockdowns and moved Tesla's headquarters from California to Texas partly in protest of California's regulations. But starting around 2022, his views shifted noticeably right. He began criticizing what he called the woke mind virus, meaning progressive ideology around gender, race, and social justice. He made statements opposing gender-affirming care for minors. When his daughter Vivian, formerly his son Xavier, transitioned and legally changed her name, disavowing any connection to Elon, he blamed her estrangement on schools and ideology. In a 2024 interview, he called gender-affirming care evil and said he would destroy the woke mind virus that killed his child. Vivian responded that Elon was an uncaring and narcissistic father who was cruel to her for being queer. This personal family conflict became a public culture war issue. It showed the cost of Elon's public persona and relentless work schedule. He has 14 known children with multiple partners but admittedly has limited relationships with some of them. His personal life is complicated, messy, often sad despite his wealth and success. In 2024, Elon became deeply involved in US presidential politics. On July 13, 2024, the day of an assassination attempt on Donald Trump at a rally in Pennsylvania, Elon publicly endorsed Trump for president. This was a significant shift for someone who had previously positioned himself as politically independent. Elon campaigned for Trump, spoke at rallies, and through his America Political Action Committee became the largest political donor in US history, giving approximately $288 million to Trump and Republican candidates. Elon also ran a controversial voter outreach program where his PAC gave away $1 million per day to randomly selected registered voters in swing states who signed a petition supporting the Constitution. Critics argued this was essentially buying votes and filed lawsuits. Elon's lawyers argued the recipients were not actually chosen randomly but were selected based on criteria, making it a payment for participation in advocacy rather than vote buying. Trump won the election in November 2024, and Elon's support was considered a significant factor, especially among young male voters who followed him online. After the inauguration in January 2025, Trump appointed Elon to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, a reference to the Dogecoin cryptocurrency. This was an advisory commission tasked with cutting government waste, reducing regulations, and making federal government operations more efficient. Elon and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who had also run for president, led DOGE with a mandate to radically cut government spending and headcount. They proposed eliminating entire federal agencies, firing tens of thousands of federal workers, and dramatically reducing regulations. This attracted intense public backlash, especially from government employees and unions. Critics argued that Doge had no formal authority, that mass firings would cripple essential services, and that Elon had massive conflicts of interest given his company's reliance on government contracts and regulatory approvals. The spectacle of the world's richest man, whose companies had benefited from billions in government subsidies, contracts, and favorable regulations, now wielding the power to reshape the federal government and potentially cut programs that helped ordinary Americans, was deeply controversial. It raised questions about the concentration of power, about whether democracy could function when individual billionaires had this much influence, about whether Elon's undeniable talents as an engineer and entrepreneur translated to competence in governance. In May 2025, after months of public feuding and disagreements, Elon left the Trump administration. Reports indicated that Trump was frustrated with Elon overshadowing him, with Elon's social media posts contradicting administration positions, and with Elon's chaotic management style. Elon returned to focusing on his companies, though he remained politically active and influential. Understanding Elon Musk requires understanding the contradiction at his core. He is capable of extraordinary vision and extraordinary pettiness. He can think on timescales of decades and civilizations, and he can spend hours on Twitter arguing with random critics. He can inspire thousands of engineers to work impossible hours on world-changing technology, and he can fire people via email without warning or compassion. He can be charming and funny, and he can be cruel and vindictive. The source of his success and the source of his dysfunction are the same. The childhood trauma, the bullying, the difficult father, the need to prove himself, the inability to accept limits, these created someone who believes he can do anything if he works hard enough and thinks clearly enough. This belief has led him to achieve things most people thought impossible. It has also led him to overestimate his expertise in areas outside his competence, to dismiss criticism even when valid, and to burn relationships personal and professional. His approach to innovation is genuinely valuable. First principles thinking, stripping away assumptions and asking what is actually possible based on physical laws, is a powerful method. Vertical integration, building capabilities in-house rather than relying on supply chains, gives companies agility and control. Rapid iteration, testing fast and learning from failure, accelerates development. These principles have application beyond rockets and cars. They are lessons about how to solve hard problems. But his approach to people is often destructive. Multiple former employees and executives describe brutal work environments, impossible demands, public humiliation, and sudden firings. Elon's management style can be characterized as both inspirational and abusive. He pushes people to achieve more than they thought possible, and he breaks people who cannot keep up with his pace or meet his standards. He has created some of the most innovative companies in the world, and he has left a trail of burned-out employees, failed relationships, and estranged family members. His relationship with his children is particularly troubling. He has 14 known biological children with multiple partners. His first son Nevada died as an infant. He has 5 children with his first wife Justine, including twins and triplets born through IVF. He has 2 children with musician Grimes, including a son with the unusual name XAEA12. He has 3 children with Siobhan Zillis, an executive at his company Neuralink. In February 2025, conservative influencer Ashley St. Clair announced she had a son with Elon named Romulus. Elon has not confirmed paternity but acknowledged paying her $2.5 million upfront and $500,000 per year ongoing. Court documents later showed paternity was confirmed via DNA test. Multiple mothers of his children have expressed concern about custody, about the children being used for photo opportunities at government events during his Doge role, about lack of privacy and exposure to public scrutiny. One daughter, Vivian, has completely disavowed him and changed her name to remove any association. Grimes has said publicly that keeping the children offline is of grave concern to her and that she has tried legal recourse but found no way to protect them from their father's public sharing. This portrait is of someone deeply lonely despite being surrounded by people, someone driven by demons he cannot escape, someone brilliant but damaged, capable of greatness but unable to find peace. The question is whether we can separate the good he has done from the harm he has caused, whether the advances in technology justify the personal costs, whether society should celebrate or restrain individuals with this much power and this little accountability. The legacy of Elon Musk is still being written, but some things are already clear. He has fundamentally changed multiple industries. The space industry is now dominated by a private company that launches more mass to orbit than all other entities combined, that has made rockets reusable and cheap. The automotive industry is rapidly transitioning to electric vehicles a decade or more ahead of schedule, largely because Tesla proved it was possible and desirable. Solar energy adoption has accelerated. Brain-computer interfaces have moved from science fiction to clinical trials. These are real changes with real impact on millions of lives and potentially on the future of human civilization. His companies have created hundreds of thousands of jobs directly and indirectly. SpaceX employs over 13,000 people. Tesla employs over 100,000. Countless suppliers, contractors, and related businesses depend on these companies. The stock price appreciation has created wealth for shareholders, including retail investors and pension funds. Tesla's market capitalization has made many early employees wealthy through stock options. But there are costs that are harder to quantify. The work culture at his companies, while producing innovation, has also produced burnout, broken relationships, and mental health crises among employees. The wealth concentration, where Elon personally is worth $500 billion while many of his workers struggle with cost of living, raises questions about economic justice. His use of social media to spread misinformation about COVID, elections, and other topics has contributed to confusion and polarization. His embrace of right-wing political movements has alienated many who once admired him and emboldened elements of the far right who feel validated by his support. The companies he has built will likely outlast him, but their trajectories are uncertain. Tesla faces increasing competition and questions about whether its technology lead is sustainable. SpaceX is dominant but dependent on continued government contracts and regulatory approval. The Mars colonization vision may prove technically possible but economically impossible. Or it may succeed and define human history. xAI is competing with OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic in a crowded AI market. Neuralink faces enormous regulatory and ethical challenges. Elon's personal evolution is also uncertain. At age 53 as of 2025, he shows no signs of slowing down. He continues to work brutal hours, run multiple companies, post dozens of times per day on X, and start new ventures. He has said he wants to die on Mars, just not on impact. He envisions a future where humanity is multiplanetary, where sustainable energy has replaced fossil fuels, where humans have merged with AI to remain relevant, where traffic moves underground, where brain injuries can be healed with implants. Whether any of this happens depends on technology, economics, politics, and countless decisions by millions of people. But Elon Musk has demonstrated that individuals can still shape history, that vision combined with capital and technical skill and relentless execution can move mountains. The question is whether the mountains he is moving are leading humanity toward a better future or toward a cliff. What can we learn from the story of Elon Musk? There are lessons about innovation, about thinking from first principles rather than by analogy, about being willing to question conventional wisdom. There are lessons about determination, about betting everything on your vision even when experts say you will fail. There are lessons about the power of vertical integration and rapid iteration. These are valuable insights that can apply to many fields. But there are also warnings. The costs of Musk's approach are real. The broken relationships, the burned-out employees, the public controversies, the political polarization, these are not accidental byproducts. They are intrinsic to the way he operates. The question each of us must answer is whether we think this trade-off is worth it. Does advancing electric vehicles and reusable rockets justify the damage to individuals and to public discourse? Can we learn the good lessons without copying the destructive patterns? There is also a lesson about power and accountability. Elon Musk has accumulated extraordinary power, economic and political. His decisions affect millions of people. His companies are critical infrastructure for communications, transportation, space access. His wealth gives him influence over elections and policy. Yet he is accountable primarily to himself and to shareholders who care mainly about financial returns. This concentration of power in private hands, especially in hands as erratic and uncompromising as Elon's, is a challenge for democratic governance. Some argue that we need to constrain billionaires, limit their wealth and influence, regulate their companies more strictly. Others argue that innovation requires individuals free to pursue ambitious visions without bureaucratic interference, that Elon's success proves the value of allowing exceptional people to build without excessive constraints. This is a genuine tension without easy answers. What seems clear is that Elon Musk is a product of his time and circumstances. The apartheid South Africa that taught him that rules are arbitrary and power matters. The Silicon Valley of the 1990s that rewarded bold bets and rapid scaling. The financial crisis of 2008 that winnowed competitors and left space for the bold. The social media age that allows individuals to build personal brands and followings independent of institutions. The political polarization that rewards provocateurs and partisans. All of these created the conditions for someone like Elon to rise. In another era, his traits might have led to different outcomes. In an earlier time, the capital and technology required for space travel and electric vehicles might have been unavailable. In a later time, competitors might have copied his approaches and limited his success. He was in the right place with the right skills at the right moment. That is always part of success. Luck matters. But within those constraints, Elon made choices. He chose to work on problems that mattered, not just problems that were profitable. He chose to stay in the game when easier to quit. He chose to bet everything rather than play safe. He chose to think different, even when that meant being lonely and attacked. These choices were not inevitable. They reflect character, for better and worse. The story of Elon Musk is ultimately a story about ambition and its costs. He wanted to be significant, to matter, to change the world. He has achieved that. Whether the world he is creating is better than the one he inherited remains an open question. Whether his children will forgive him remains an open question. Whether his companies will fulfill their missions or collapse under contradictions remains an open question. What is certain is that Elon Reeve Musk, born in Pretoria, South Africa on June 28, 1971, escaped his circumstances through intelligence and obsession, built companies that changed industries, accumulated wealth beyond measure, and became one of the most famous and controversial people alive. His story is not over. The final chapters, the ultimate impact and meaning of his life, are still being written. Whether he is remembered as a visionary who saved humanity or a cautionary tale about concentrated power and unchecked ego depends on what happens next. The future he is building will judge him. So will we.